are back at the midpoint on momentum. And we talked about this on Friday. Thank you, Japan, for the nice big check to the big financial markets, getting that squeeze that is continuing and defying reality a little bit. We are on high alert, though. I will simply note that the daily has gotten us back above the 20 and the 50-day EMA. We've talked about the fact that there are lots and lots of funds out there that would love to take some profits if we can get back up to about that 6,800 and maybe even higher level. Right, we're at 68 right now, maybe 6,900, maybe even all-time highs. But the reality is this: the purpose of the market is to sell. We're heading into December. We're in that anomaly, that Santa Claus arena coming up. That would be the last 10 days of the year and the first 5 of 2026. Nat gas, silver, copper, palladium, materials taking the lead again today. That's where our focus is going to be over at the NVIDIA 4D on trades. I'm looking at Lithium Americas. I'm looking at MP Materials. I'm looking at gold. I'm looking for silver. I'm looking for the continuation, because as we've said, all roads point to more monetary inflation and more money printing over the long term. And Japan delivered last week, taking us again into an environment with more loose fiscal and monetary conditions. That said, NVIDIA is still the big story for these markets, and we will talk a little bit about what is potentially going on here. There he is. We were worried about you, Charlie. Glad to see you. Good morning, everybody. All right. So once again, before we get here, day like today, look, we want to be prepared for Wednesday. We want to be prepared for those final hours heading into Thanksgiving. And then keep in mind, we have a trading session on Friday. Friday after Thanksgiving, anything can happen. So you want to make sure that you are well positioned today. Think about profits that you may have made over the last couple of days if you were long. And if you want to deal with the indigestion of potential volatility on Friday, I typically like to cut and take any some trades off the table, or using the recent strength in the S&P 500 to sell calls on existing positions and then not worry about it and move into December with a little bit more optimism. Okay, here we go. The pressure is building, and this is still, we are not in an environment where money is rushing back into those big mega cap names. Technology is up this morning, but it has largely lagged the communications, the healthcare, the cyclicals, and the materials. We're seeing an interesting little bit of a rotation into other areas, and we'll explain why in a moment. But really the key thing here is just to be back at this period of equilibrium. We have seen on our daily kind of a pickup in momentum going back to Friday. I always get nervous when we get into this yellow environment because the funds that want to sell are still in control. What we want to see is a continuation of buying pressure and a decline in selling pressure. That has kind of been the story since Friday. I would really like to see a good day on Friday to really have a lot of optimism heading into December. Beware that Friday could easily set up for a dump day while people aren't paying attention. But the story for the Russell really is the fact that the selling pressure is falling. And that is very critical for us to note. You know, the number of stocks that have been beaten up, that have been breaking down over the last month and a half, that has really dipped. We're paying very close attention again to the industrials and the healthcare sectors, particularly for smaller cap value and smaller cap quality stocks. The technology yesterday, we saw a pickup finally. Western Digital, STX, Seagate had a nice breakout day, and AMAT as well. But the reality is NVIDIA and AMD and some of these other major players are still under pressure, including Oracle. All right, so as we dig into what's happening in this market, and forgive me because I definitely have the flu. It's fantastic. I highly recommend this year's variant. The rotation does continue. Money is not rushing back into NVIDIA, and that is what is kind of setting up this unusual situation at the moment. NVIDIA up a little bit today, Chinese regulators have barred ByteDance from deploying NVIDIA chips in their new data centers. That was a report that came out this morning. And that is challenging, right? Because ByteDance is NVIDIA's largest buyer in China. So we're seeing a little bit of a pop this morning, a little bit of, and I just want to note that this relates, I think, largely to the fact that the MFI was down in oversold territory, and we're seeing a little bit of bidding this morning. I would be looking for a continuation of a fade in NVIDIA. The big question for these markets with this news about Google and about whether or not hyperscalers are going to be the ones engaging in building their own chips, and if there is this new competitive pressure on NVIDIA that challenges their monopoly, what really happens now is one of the old school stories of the dot-com era, which is, hey, do we start to see valuation compression on a name like NVIDIA? And what happens in that event is people who are deeply committed to purchasing an equity and doing so for the point of buying 44 years of earnings say, well, I'm not paying 181 for that. I'm not paying. And then the next person says, well, I'm not paying 180. I'm not willing to pay 43 times earnings. And the next person says, I'm not willing to pay 40 times earnings. And all of a sudden, you have an equity that has just completely has the air ripped out of it. And why else does this matter? It matters because NVIDIA is easily the darling of the S&P 500. It is, again, one of the stocks that is very highly liquid, very tight spreads. Dealers want it collateral-based equity that is utilized in repo for the purposes of borrowing and leverage. This is a very levered stock. Well, all of a sudden, if the valuations are compressing and the stock is falling, well, that leverage starts to unwind. And then it gets even more challenging because in an environment where there are 1,700 ETFs that own this stock, well, what does that do? Well, if you have leverage leaving and you have people engaging in a valuation compression story, what then happens is all those ETFs have to rebalance. So any ETFs that are tracking the S&P 500, and there are plenty of those because thematic ETFs, the people who were money managers who had created thematic ETFs, they kind of threw the towel in and said, let's just track the S&P 500 and just charge a couple more basis points in the process. Just charge more money for it. Nobody's going to notice. I'm looking at you, Catholic Values ETF at a 0.3 ratio when I can just buy the SPY for 0.09%. But all of those ETFs may have to rebalance. So the pressure on NVIDIA could be pretty significant. And that leads to rotation, sure, into the Googles and into the other mega cap stocks. But this is just getting started. And we do know that Michael Burry going over to Substack has been hammering away on NVIDIA. Most recent argument is, no, NVIDIA is not Enron. And keep in mind, NVIDIA actually put out a report saying, we're not Enron. The argument was, there's Cisco, and Cisco is the great valuation compression story of the dot-com bubble. In addition to that rotation into names that are in banks and industrials and materials, we saw a lot of insider buying in the last couple of days in the banking sector, particularly at the regional level. We're starting to see some deal flow happening in the M&A space. So that's all very positive. In addition to this, we are seeing some very aggressive banked S&P 500 targets for next year. Somebody came out with a 8,000 projection for the end of next year, the focus on earning strength and continued AI investment. And then Ed Yardeni, the great macroeconomist, saying that he believes the S&P 500 will hit 10,000 by 2030. These bullish forecasts can attract new money into equities. They can lift valuations if the earnings deliver. And Yardeni's argument is completely around earnings growth. I argue that it's entirely possible if we maintain all of that loose fiscal and monetary policy that would make money cheap, more leverage, more passive flows, more borrowing, more debt, higher equities, S&P 500, 10,000. Yeah, we'll also be 45 trillion in debt by then, but hey, who cares? All eyes on Japan and Europe Asia and Europe are rallying alongside global stocks, reacting to the renewed optimism around policy, earnings, and valuations. Policy being the key term there, with Japan offering a significant amount of stimulus. We're watching the EWJ. There it is. Yep, coming out, just basically tracking the S&P 500. Same type of momentum flows as well. All roads pointing to more fiscal intervention, more policy intervention in Japan. Looking for any setup on that trade. Again, if you can, just keep it cheap, do spreads, set stops back at that 250, 20 and 50-day moving average. We're obviously not out of the woods completely, but it is, again, this is one of those things that I just have to keep returning to. When you have these events, when you have these short-term downturns and the jitters that happen in the financial system and concerns about the Japanese banks and the carry trade and everything else, well, what happens? Well, in 2011, it was the European Central Bank with stimulus. In 2015, it was China with stimulus. In 2018, it was us with stimulus. In 2020, it was everybody with stimulus. 2022, it was really the Bank of England that got it started, and we started doing a lot more loose fiscal policy here in the U.S., and now it's Japan's turn. So kind of got to be bullish, not fighting the central banks. But once again, we're not completely out of the woods, but following the momentum, people may look back in 3 months and say, why didn't I buy when the Japanese printed money? Same thing over and over and over and over again with momentum flowing back. We will look for reasons to continue momentum trades to the upside. All right. We're a little early. That means we got 3 minutes. Hey, still time. $50,000 huge Black Friday giveaway. For a limited time, we got $52,000 Garrett Baldwin Theo credits available for purchase at $1,000 each, turning $1 into $2. Apply your $2,000 credit to any of the Masterminds or Trade Alert services. First come, first serve. Limited to, I think my parents both bought one. They'll split it. Call our support team for details, 623-244-5657. Use code word Garrett. And if you like Gianni more, you could just use code word Gianni, but tell him that I sent you, and that'll do too. Again, you can win a Falcon F10 trading laptop. Claim your credit now. 623-244-5657. Code word, 2 R's, 2 T's. Don't mess that up. And do not call me by my first name, which is James. Okay. So, good morning, Wild Hawk. Good to see you. All right. So, before we jump into the runner, we're going to talk a bit about, well, what are the sectors that are looking strong? And it is the materials trying to break back above that 100-day EMA. That is going to be a key line to be watching over the next few days. Look, you're going to see it. We have danced around that level multiple times going back to October, mid-October. We tested it 1, 2, 3. This is the resistance level, right around that $88 level. So if the XLB can get back above that level, looking for a continuation toward that 90, 92, possibly even higher level heading into December. Why does this matter? Well, look, all of this looks pretty good. We've got a nice move on the RSI, the MFI, and the MACD. We're going to cover those momentum indicators and oscillators in at 9:10, just to give you a sense of looking at the dailies, just to get a sense of what is on the move, what is not, and of course, when to take advantage and look for a contrarian bid if and when we hit oversold on RSI and MFI. All right, Secret Agent Charlie. I know. Okay. The runner. In 20 minutes, I get to run to a car with my wife, get in the car, have her lecture me a little bit, tell me that we're leaving too late, and then we will drive 6 hours in stone cold silence, listening to Taylor Swift. All right, Reddit. Hey-o. Look at that little pop. Potential Meta Google AI chip deal ignited a 12% surge. in Reddit stock amid broader AI optimism. Okay, so Reddit, which not exactly like a name I know very, very well, trading at a very significant valuations, obviously 21 times sales. That's 21 years of revenue for anybody who is not in the know to justify that valuation. That means that 20 years of every dollar that goes in the door, no taxes, no payroll, no R&D, just every dollar in the door. So wow, that's the environment that we are in, obviously. But hey, we are in that big breakout mode. Strength on the RSI, strength on the MFI, improvement MACD. You see the histogram expanding. If we get a little bit of a pullback today, starting the day, get down to around 215, that becomes a place to potentially go long. 215, 215.50. And just doing something pretty simple, just trying to look for the continuation of strength. One of the things that happens in an environment like this, particularly with momentum stocks, and particularly when you have a 10% move, if the strength is there, and it looks like it is, don't be shocked to see some profit taking. And you could see higher highs, higher lows as we move. Reddit, as we start the day, anchor yourself to the volume weighted average price, looking at VWAP, and we're going to anchor this specifically to the 4 o'clock hour yesterday's close, to try to give us a little bit of a sense of where institutions may buy and defend this stock. Now, we were, one moment, I somehow screwed that up. That is a theme. Let's just put it at 15.59. There we go. That's exciting. All right. What we're looking for, pretty simplistic. We dump down to that 215.70 level. This is going to be your line in the sand today. You're looking to bid back in, and you're looking for a move back to VWAP, and then hopefully back to the highs of the day. 218 would be your move. $3 move, just focusing exclusively on short duration options. So long calls for Reddit. And this is a if X buy Y type of trade. Very important to note that. But if you're just looking out to Friday, it ain't going to be cheap to trade, by the way. You're going to be looking at like a $5 option trade. That said, down here, we hit that line by the 215 call, and you're looking and hoping for a move back up to 218. All right, Zoom. I like Zoom. Not the actual product, just the actual stock. There's something romantic about it. That is absolutely the right word. Zoom. It was like a value stock like 6 months ago, right? Like, oh wow, this thing was at 64. This honestly should be much, much higher. Like, it's so, like, this is attractive. 77% margins, operating margins, profit margin 33, very capital efficient, like light tech, not much there. I don't know how it's not worth more. Target price at 94. Again, trading with momentum, but I like just trading spreads on this. So same type of thing that we always talk about. Take what the market gives you, look for the higher probability, and what you're doing in this situation with technology and communication stocks looking a little bit stronger. So Zoom, currently at 86. I'm going to have to go off of yesterday's numbers real quick, but if I can go down to that 100-day moving average, that's kind of where I'm looking for support. Something as simple as, it's 80. You can do one second, buy 78, right, 80. The December 19th, 80, 78 put spread. That's actually pretty damn good. right now, based on yesterday's numbers, and you might have to adjust maybe like the 79 and the 77, but what you're looking for is a high probability of profit. The way that this is set up on the numbers, it's 175 to make 25, max return 14.3%, break even at 79.75, probability of profit at 88.5%. That's the 80.78 for December. But you're going to need to look for a little bit more. A little bit. We need this. We need some things to narrow a little bit. But big move up to 890 yesterday at one point. Looking for a continuation and looking for that trend on just strong earnings to take us a little bit higher. Geo Group. Wow. There's a name. It's been a while. It's been a while. Geo. This was one of my favorite stocks last year and has pulled back. This thing just rocked. Wow. 35. I didn't know it got that high. Because we were in at like 10 and out at like 22. Look, can we get off the mat, Geo? Can we do anything? Just do something. Security. They own all the immigration facilities. And that's really the trend, the story. So I don't want to put myself in a situation here where I am trying to buy something for cheaper in this situation. This is a pretty ugly little chart, to be honest with you. Lower highs, lower lows. But what we'd be looking for is, we break above this moving average and get back here just to the 50. I'd be pretty content with that. Geo, you could buy the stock, just set a tight stop. 1527, 8-day moving average becomes your stop. You're looking for that positive switch over to finally come on this. And you're not looking for a whole lot. You're looking for about a 10% move on the stock itself. I'm not trading any options on that. To the downside, Box, HPQ, and Kim. Box, God. Forget these companies were public. Who uses Box? That's a thing still? Who out there is actually, do any of you use Box? And if not, then let's short it. Box, get out of here. It was a Zoom was a credit spread. So you're gonna put up 17. You're gonna get a credit at 25. What? Box is a storage company. It's a storage company. It's a digital storage company that is impossible. That is impossible to sign into. That's what it is. All right, that's what Box is. I'm off board on this, but lower highs, lower lows. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's giving me bad flashbacks. HPQ, pretty bad. Oof. And I don't know who's $1 billion AI-driven cost savings plan. So they're going to cut 4,000 to 5,000 jobs and 650 in restructuring. Again, legacy technology companies that I don't know how they survive. This is going to be your chart, 15-minute. And if you're going to try to short it, 2450, you're going to see if you can get this back down to 2050. Don't be shocked. I'm just going to tell you right now, don't be shocked by some sort of reversal on this. This is a volume-weighted average price play. So get VWAP up on HPQ. Keep an eye on it. If we bounce down to the lower bound, don't be shocked if there is some sort of reversal. Bad news becoming good news. Kim, I don't know what Kim is. Kimco Realty Corp. I don't really think there's any way to short that. So pass. All right. Dell, Tesla, NVIDIA, all back in focus, all back in play. Dell, interesting little scenario, record revenue. So that's weird, right? HPQ looks bad and Dell looks good. And I haven't used oh no, I just admitted my wife was right. I haven't used a PC in 6 years. So I wouldn't even know where to start. I am fully ensnared in the economic moat that is Apple. But Dell, hey, find weighted average price play. That's it. Just keep VWAP up today and look for movement and anchor back to these key moments in their earnings reports, right? Sad, but back in the 1970s was frequently recognized as being the best place to work in tech. Well, times are changing. What's the best place to work in tech? TheoTrade. How'd you have that on your bingo card? It is a tech company. Everything is a tech company. Keep that in mind. 1600. All right. Well, that's what we're looking for. There's your support this morning, 5:30 after that selling. If Dell does find itself down at that 128 level somehow, people taking profits, this is going to be your line in the sand, and you would be looking for a move from anchored after hours to this here. You can also anchor to the high of the morning as well, if you so wish. NVIDIA, this thing just is going to be repricing. A little bit of a squeeze this morning. Looking to fade it. But this will be a key line in the sand as well. 180, 178, 03. Okay. So, other names to watch, consumer cyclicals. RL, Ralph Lauren. Give you some names. Breakout stock. Ralph Lauren looks good. Pacific Biosciences. Looks like this is getting a bid. Wait, hold up. Am I seeing this right? ULCC, Frontier Holdings. This is getting a bid. Wow. I don't know what happened. There had to be news. Who likes news? You get above 432. You got some daylight. Frontier Group. This is why I drive. I do not fly Frontier. I believe that Spirit Airlines and Frontier both list Greyhound Bus as their competitor in their 10K. I know that Spirit used to do it. I'm pretty sure Frontier does as well, which is pretty awesome. All right. So real quick. Technical indicators. Momentum indicators. Explained. Huzzah. Momentum is not a mystery. You just need to read it in waves. That was very cryptic, was it not? Very poetic. Putting things up on charts, things that we can read, things that we can understand. Relative strength index. If you don't know this, learn it. Know it. RSI. Not every wave is worth chasing. RSI will tell you which ones are already crowded. So when the RSI, relative strength index, and this is going to be important for the SPY, it's going to be important for all the different sectors. Like technology can continue to churn, but the SPY does a pretty good job on the daily for us. In addition, energy, XLE, like it's like clockwork when the XLE gets to overbought. This is a lot of oil positioning. A lot of the energy names in this space are impacted by oil prices, obviously, what their reserves are. So when we see 70, that is overextended on relative strength index. If you're looking at names like NVIDIA or Tesla or Amazon, you can stretch that up to about 80 that you're going to be looking and saying, okay, this is overbought. This is either where if I own the shares, I'm going to sell calls, or I might want to either hedge or just flat out short the stock. This is also when we see, movement around, the 50 level when it crosses back above the 50. Price momentum is building, and typically this will align pretty nicely with the 20-day moving average. Critical thing. price does not necessarily mean that the volume is there, which is kind of fascinating, is it not? Because RSI is a price oscillator. MFI is different. Momentum is nothing without volume. So the MFI will tell you if money is actually moving into the trade. And this was the concern that we had a couple of days ago when stocks were rising, but the MFI was actually falling because we were still in a lower volume environment. We're seeing a little bit of improvement right now, which is giving me a little bit of optimism. But the MFI combines price and volume to show whether capital is flowing in or out. It's not just direction. This really is conviction if you need some that. So I pay close attention to, this is pretty simple. When the XLE gets into oversold on both of these, it becomes like a screaming contrarian opportunity to go long on a lot of different energy names. Same thing with tech. Same thing with communication stocks. So when we get into these oversold periods, we also tend to see an alignment with, we were just kind of in toward that oversold territory. That alignment with that 100-day moving average is important. But I also will note, pay close attention to when we get oversold on the 30s, 30-minute charts. Because, again, oversold RSI, oversold MFI, that sets up nicely for just either short covering or what Stanley Druckenmiller has talked about, the lack of trend in the market. It just doesn't continue to just fall out of the sky. No, we start to see some bidding that brings the market back, that brings a situation where the funds then sell back into that strength, and so on and so forth. So always be watching. RSI, MFI, 30-minute, and the daily are the two preferreds for me. And we get down into this extended region, you will also notice that when we have a crisis, that's usually where the central bank steps in, because there's a lot of dirt. If this thing would have kept going and the leverage kept leaving the system and the leverage hedge funds were dumping the bonds, and that leads to what we had back in 2020 during COVID and 2008. In addition, you got the MACD. The MACD is where you feel a shift. You literally like feel the ground moving from under you. It tracks the relationship between two moving averages. It's the cleanest way to see short-term pressure and if it's overtaking a long-term direction. And here we go. Question now is, are we going to get into that positive side on this histogram? When the MACD crosses its signal line, the swell is building. You've got confirmation that momentum is shifting, and when it crosses below, the wave can and will break down. This also aligns very nicely with key moving averages, particularly the 20-day moving average. And we want to see the histogram. Bigger bars mean bigger support, bigger pressure. So when the histogram flips and the bars grow, that's usually when the move can get violent. I don't use the MACD in oscillation. I want to see price reclaiming structure. You want RSI moving above 50. You want relative money flow moving above 50. You want MACD moving positive. You want them ADX giving you something positive as well. We also have the average true range on here. That measures volatility. It doesn't care about direction. It just tells you how far a stock is moving on average. A high ATR means wider swings, big risk, big potential. A lower ATR means calmer water. And the ADX, which you're looking at, right? Clean waves have direction. The ADX tells you if the trend has power or if it is chop. Obviously, we want to see positive move here, positive move here. Want to see the MFI above here. And when you go back and you look at these periods moving back above key moving averages, what do you think that means when I say momentum is turning positive? Right here, right here, right here. I need this here. That is another poor man's way to look at momentum in the S&P 500. It is 9:20. That means I have to go get into a car. and listen to Taylor Swift for the next 6.5 hours with my wife and my daughter. Don is going to be here in 10 minutes, not playing Taylor Swift. I will not bet on what he is playing, but I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will see you all on Friday morning here at 8:45 as usual. If you have any questions, as always, support at TheoTrade.com. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you on the other side. Take care.